Hey everyone, today I want to make an audio production kickstart sort of guide for Linux, just stuff that I wish I knew when I was trying to migrate my setup to Linux, because sometimes it seemed like things would work on other people's end, but not mine, and I know that really sucks, so let's get into it. Okay, so obviously the DAW that you choose to use will change your workflow and whatnot, but on Linux it's really important to know what DAW you're going to use because as far as I know, most major DAWs, even ones that are supported on Windows but not on Linux, will work thanks to Wine. So if you're an FL Studio or a Live user, those DAWs will work for the most part, and you can even get most Windows plugins working as well inside of these DAWs, which is very convenient. However, the caveat is that because of Wine, you may suffer slight audio delay, higher CPU usage, and perhaps a little instability. Not to say that those issues can't be fixed, but as far as I know, remedying issues like slight audio delay may require custom kernel versions and/or numerous tweaks. If you're comfortable with any of those issues, you can definitely go ahead and produce music through Wine, but I would really recommend a Linux-supported DAW such as Bitwig or Reaper. Plus, native Linux DAWs can support Windows plugins, which I'll touch on later in this video. Of course though, like Windows, you can find native VSTs and plugins for Linux, in which most of them follow a more appealing and respectable software philosophy while taking advantage of Linux's great performance. There's not much to say besides the fact that, besides the most popular plugins, there are quite a lot more native Linux plugins than you might expect on first glance, so you can definitely still do a lot with what's offered. One recommendation that I have is when installing any Linux plugins, if you haven't already, you should make the following three folders inside your home directory: .vst, .vst3, and .lv2. By doing this, certain plugins can be more easily accessed and formatted into the system, and therefore the DAW. Speaking of DAWs, once you've created these folders, add them as plugin locations using whatever options are available in your DAW of choice. For example, in Bitwig, to add a plugin location, I would go into Settings, Locations, and add my plugin location using the file dialog that pops up. Now, I've talked all about Linux plugins and how they can be great and optimal solutions for any audio producer's needs, but what good are they if they don't work in the first place? If you're watching this part of the video, the most likely reason is that you're looking to fix this issue like I was at first, and the cause is usually an unintentional byproduct of a usually greatly functional utility. If you're familiar with Linux, you'll know that Linux has many packaging formats, and one of the most common formats are system packages, usually supplied as .debs or .rpms. Typically, if possible, these packages are the most optimal for the user because they can integrate and work with root files and directories. However, this can be unsecure and sometimes require manual intervention, as these packages rely on system dependencies to work, which when conflicts get introduced can be a whole mess. So there are alternate packaging formats such as Flatpaks and app images that are containerized and can supply their specifically required dependencies with the app. In the case of Linux DAWs, most of them are available as Flatpaks and will usually offer the most optimal experience for any given use case. However, when Flatpaks are intended to work with files, especially those beyond the scope of user directories, which is where most plugins would be installed by default, it can be a hassle to get these apps working as intended. If you're lucky, by using FlatSeal, you can edit the permissions of your DAW to access any specific directories you'd like, such as those that contain plugins. However, sometimes it will just straight up not work, and for that you'll have to run your DAW of choice on containerized to access system directories. If you installed a DAW as a Flatpak, the location of your DAW should usually be at the following location up on screen. From here, find your DAW, go to Current, Active, and Files, and the executable for your DAW should usually be there. If not, then it might be in the bin directory instead. Going forward, you can either launch it from here or create a script to launch your DAW from its root directory like I have. One thing to keep in mind is that some files might not be shared between a single DAW running uncontainerized as compared to running in a container by default. For example, the packages Bitwig supplies to install inside of it had to be reinstalled when running it outside of a container, but besides that it worked just fine. From here, to get any plugins installed in root directories recognized by your DAW, add the following 3 folders to your plugin locations. Now, every native Linux plugin that's installed should be recognized and working. While Linux plugins are great, there are definitely ample use cases for Windows plugins, and to get those working we use a utility called yabridge. Note that if you're setting up yabridge on any of the distros listed, I recommend that you follow the installation guide and also check what people have to say about the installation process as well. In my case, I was using Fedora and I had to download a specialized version of Wine and then install yabridge from the Copper repo. But anyways, once you've installed yabridge, grab whatever plugin you need and then set it up as you would on Windows using Wine. Once you're done, add the path where your plugin is using yabridge CTL if it hasn't been added already, and type in yabridge CTL sync to get your plugin synced. It's important to note that earlier in the video I told you to create those 3 folders in the home directory for plugins, and as you can see, yabridge uses those folders to place plugins in. So if you follow the setup by adding those folders to your plugin locations, your Windows plugin will be recognized when you open up your DAW. The only other thing I want to say about yabridge and Windows plugins is that since it runs under Wine, you may experience higher CPU usage and audio delay. I personally haven't experienced any audio delay so far, so it's been pretty great, but I've definitely gotten to the point where sometimes I have a bunch of Windows plugins and I start hearing artifacts due to high CPU usage. Not that it hasn't been like that on Windows, but just something to keep in mind. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Linux is extremely viable for audio production nowadays, and having a free and open source environment that you can control is imperative to the reliability of your setup. So whether you're someone who is already trying to get Linux audio production to be basically functional, or someone who is interested in it, now you know how it works, and I hope you have a good time producing.